Hi, everyone. My name is Siobhan Edwards, and welcome to the Accessible Street Studio info session. I serve as the lead for the studio. We're very excited to have this opportunity serve as an additional outlet to answer any questions that you all may have, as well as share more detailed information about the Accessible Street Studio. But before we dive into the studio specificities, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Kate Shubik, who will be walking us through the general Newlab overview for those of you who may not be as familiar with our work.
Thank you, Siobhan. So as Siobhan noted, some of you may be familiar with Newlab. However, those of you who are not, Newlab is a community of experts and innovators on a mission to apply transformative technology to help solve major challenges facing the world today. So we leverage technologies across a range of domains, as you can see here, things including robotics, AI, and computer vision, really to transform the things that matter most. And when we talk about what matters most, we're thinking about our health, our cities, and our environment. So our business has two primary components. The first is our membership community, which includes more than 160 companies made up of over 800 entrepreneurs, engineers, and inventors that have access to our space and a suite of resources to help their companies scale. The second component is our studios. These are our innovation programs in which we partner with a Fortune 500 company or a government entity or foundation with the goal of bringing together our Newlab community and startups from across the world with industry and civic leaders to co-design and test sustainable and scalable solutions. You'll hear more about the Accessible Street Studio shortly, which is a great example of what our studios look like in practice. To give you a better sense of our community and space here at Newlab, we wanted to call out a few stats. Our member companies represent a collective value of $2.6 billion and have raised north of $700 million in funding. Newlab has 110,000 square feet of space across two locations, which includes prototyping labs, collaborative workspaces, and private offices for our members, as well as conference rooms and several event spaces. And we have a full-time product realization team and over $5 million of on-site equipment designed to help our community members take a concept from an initial idea to a full working prototype. So as you can see in these first two images, Newlab has two locations in Brooklyn, New York. Our headquarters is housed in a former shipbuilding facility in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is a 300-acre industrial campus that operates in a lot of ways like a mini city and functions as a living lab for our member companies to test out products and technologies, basically in their own backyard. And then a short walk away in the second image, we have an additional building with more workspace and conference rooms, really to accommodate our growing companies. And we are also excited to be expanding our physical footprint to Detroit. And as we solidify those plans in the near future, we're currently set up in our beta space in Detroit, which is where Siobhan will be working out of. So we're proud to be home to a dynamic community of members at Newlab, with 23% of our companies led by a female founder, 70% of our founders with a master's degree or a doctorate, 39% that are serial entrepreneurs, and 38% that are coming to Newlab from outside of New York, so relocating from other areas. The Newlab ecosystem is really representative of a diverse set of perspectives. Newlab has created an interactive and networked community for our members. So in addition to the physical resources we provide, our members have access to exclusive programming from subject matter experts that are relevant to their work and networking opportunities, strategic introductions, both from the Newlab team or others in our network, whether that's advisors or investors or potential customers, an OS system that enables members to connect with the broader community and really seamlessly access resources. And lastly, an active Slack channel for kind of quick answers to questions that come up and a lot of real kind of organic conversation in real time. And then lastly, Newlab partners with a variety of entities, as you can see from this slide here. So from Fortune 500 companies to business improvement districts or foundations. And really the common thread here is they all share the goal of leveraging transformative technology to solve these big, tricky industry and civic challenges. And that's a nice segue into our partnership with Michigan Central and the Accessible Street Studio, which I'll pass back to Siobhan to share more about now.
Thanks so much, Kate. The Accessible Street Studio is focused on connecting neighborhoods by solving mobility challenges. The studio is a collaboration between Ford's Michigan Central and Newlab to foster an ecosystem of startups, researchers, investors, and entrepreneurs. Its focus is on immediate mobility challenges in the neighborhoods around Michigan Central Station. The goal is to help deliver high impact projects that apply emerging technology to address community needs. Michigan Central is a new mobility innovation district located in Corktown. Again, our partnership is meant to help activate this new mobility innovation district in the neighborhoods surrounding the Michigan Central Station, as you see here. Those neighborhoods include Corktown, North Corktown, Hubbard Richard, and Mexican Town. The Accessible Street Studio is meant to directly serve those communities in those neighborhoods. These are the 4 focus areas of the studio, and where the studio's pilot projects will be directly addressing the challenges based off of these focus areas. The research we completed over about a 3-month period enlisted in conversations with various interviews with various industry experts around Detroit, community members, residents, and local leaders. Most important, the residents and the community have affirmed and contributed to building out these focus areas, and they don't exist exclusively of one another. They're definitely interconnected. So just to get into some specifics of these 4 focus areas, the first one is bridging transportation gaps. For those of you who may not know, Detroit is a big, sprawling city. Public transportation exists, but is limited due to the large and sparse population of the city, as well as it historically being deemed as the motor city. Meeting residents where they are helps them connect the dots so more navigable neighborhoods can exist, and making sure that those residents have all the options to get them to and from that bus stop, for example, is feasible. The second focus area that you'll see here is fostering safe and welcoming streets. This is to enhance mobility and rethink the modes of transportation from the ground up. It looks like making streets more accessible for pedestrians, people with disabilities, public transit riders, and people using micromobility services. The third focus area, access to mobility information, is about making transportation information systems more connected and intuitive to enhance many elements of Detroiters' lives. You know, we want to allow for a better connected network when it comes to the types of modes available, where the modes may be located, and the ability to access this information without a smartphone or internet access. The fourth focus area is access to essential resources. So basic necessities like groceries can be out of touch without reliable access to transportation. And these new mobility services can be used as a stepping stone that's necessary to get folks to and from work, doctor's appointments, school, and so much more. Using mobility innovation as a means to allow residents to access these resources right in their neighborhoods is what our studio is all about. So in this slide here, you'll see the benefits to becoming a participant in the Accessible Street Studio. So you'll see from left to right, starting with investment and exposure, there'll be access to grant funding, access to Newlab's robust corporate and investor network, press and exposure to additional corporate partnerships and programs. And you'll have the ability to build and pilot your projects and ideas, working with Michigan Central, Newlab, and the greater Detroit community, the ability to use your company's technology and data to address Detroit residents' mobility needs in a meaningful and impactful manner. being able to explore partnership opportunities with studio partners and the broader Detroit community. And finally, you'll have, the benefit of accessing the community and space. So just like Kate mentioned earlier, access to Newlab's locations, on-site prototyping resources, and our great peer community of over 160 companies. You'll be able to engage leading industry, venture, and academic experts, and be able to foster relationships with Detroit residents, relevant community organizations, businesses, and the local mobility ecosystem. So this is a high-level snapshot of the Accessible Streets Studio timeline. Just kind of going to go through the timeline in a little bit more detail. So our open call launched last Wednesday, the 13th. And the application submission period will remain open throughout February 24th. And you'll see applications will be reviewed. Just wanted to note that they'll be reviewed on a rolling basis. So the earlier you submit, the more access you'll have to the Newlab team to ask any questions, set up one-on-one calls, as well as for us to be able to reach out to you all based off of your application submission and things of that nature. So during the review process in March, again, like I said, we'll be in touch with teams, which again, as I noted, setting up calls, conversations. And then in April, we'll select the participants, and that's when the teams will be notified. And then you'll see piloting in Detroit will happen on a rolling basis as well, starting in May and go throughout July. But you'll see that as the participants are chosen and solidified, et cetera, we'll be working with them to build out individualized plans for the pilot projects. They'll have access to, studio resources, advisors, as well as be able to start to build up that relationship with the residents in the community in Detroit. So that's all I have so far. Please feel free to take a picture, copy the link there to be able to apply. Again, I'm Siobhan, and we'll kind of start off with questions here. So give me 1 second as I go through these questions. Okay, so I see one question. Are teams expected to relocate fully to Detroit? No, you're not expected to fully relocate to Detroit. The goal is for there to be some sort of presence from your team in Detroit to get to learn the community, understand Detroit better, and start building out that relationship. But we definitely do not expect you to just pick up and completely relocate. That's not the expectation. Let's see. Another question. Can you submit more than one application? Sure, you can submit more than one application, but we ask that whatever you're submitting, your ideas that you're submitting, making sure that they're separate enough to where they need to have a separate application. So for example, let's say you have an idea you want to submit, but you see that it's relevant to more than one focus area. That is totally fine, because in the application, you're able to select or check more than one focus area for your idea to be applied to. So definitely take advantage of that. But then if you feel like, okay, I have this totally different idea that can be applicable to more than one focus area, then you can definitely submit another application. There's no limit, but just want to make sure you're being mindful that, hey, this is totally separate from the first application I sent in by doing so. Let's see. I see we have a question from talking about, there's a question asking if the demo has to be a completely new idea or project, or could we apply to build on or expand a project that's already planned to be deployed in the neighborhoods during the same period? Let's see here. I would say, I think that's going to depend on what the actual project is, right? So we don't want to discourage folks from already trying to connect with what's going on in the ecosystem already, but we want to make sure it's actually feasible and makes sense in terms of where our residents sit and how we can make sure that that idea can live and be sustainable through the studio. That's a great question. Definitely, if you have any thoughts on an idea that may already exist, or you want to collaborate with someone else, or please feel free to email us and we can also handle that on a case-by-case basis. But definitely don't want to discourage that collaboration that's already going on in the ecosystem. Great question. We have another question. Do you expect products or ideas to be fully built out before applying? I'm gonna turn to my colleague Kate to answer that one a little bit clearer, since she has firsthand experience in operating some of these projects from the Brooklyn side of things.
Absolutely. Thanks, Siobhan, for bringing me in. Great question. And so I think what we're thinking about here is when we're selecting startups to participate in the studio, these pilots will need to be deployed and active and be able to be utilized by residents when we go to launch over the spring and summer. So while the exact plan of the pilot or all of the resources that will be needed and kind of all of those fine-tuned details don't have to be fully fleshed out when you're submitting a pilot idea, it can't be a product that's in early stages of being developed and then it's like, okay, now comes the time to deploy the pilot when summer hits and we don't have, you know, a working product to put out in the world yet. So you should think about it as like the product, yes, that needs to be deployable. That needs to be ready to kind of hit the streets of Detroit and be tested and be used. But in terms of kind of the full formation of the pilot plan and all of the stakeholders that need to be involved and things like that, that's an iterative process with the studio and Michigan Central.
Thanks, Kate. All right, let's see. Are there any more questions? All right, well, if there aren't any more questions from you all, we can, again, my email is listed there. We can set up time to talk one-on-one if that's easier, but just wanted to make sure this could serve as a resource and way to get your questions answered.
It looks like we have a couple more open questions, Siobhan. Maybe I can read these out too, and then you can chime in. So one of the first ones is, who is eligible to apply? If you could share a bit more around that question.
Sure, and on our website, you can see that, but as long as you have, you know, a startup or company, you can apply, making sure that all of the legal implications are all set as well. But yeah, as long as you're a startup or company and you are in a certain stage of funding, you're able to apply. And that information is also listed on our website for more detailed specific notes. But yeah, as long as you're a startup or company, you can even be a nonprofit as well. But consulting firms are not eligible to apply.
Great. Another question here is, how many applicants will be chosen by the studio to participate?
Sure. So we are looking for about five to 10 startup teams to choose to select for the program.
Great. And then how much grant funding will be allocated to those selected participants?
Sure. So the grant funding, so we have a pool of about $200,000, and we will disperse and allocate based off of the number, an equal amount based off of the number of participants that we choose. So we have $200,000, and we are looking to select between 5 and 10 teams, and we'll disperse the funds equally depending on how many teams we have.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then I know you had mentioned, Siobhan, and I did as well, kind of the beta space that's in Detroit currently. Could you talk a bit about whether participants will have access to that physical space in Detroit?
Sure. So that space will serve as a kind of landing spot for startup teams, and it'll be open for the teams to hold meetings with advisors as well as with one another. And we will be making sure, COVID protocols are taken into effect, masks, hand sanitizer, etc. So it's there to be used as needed, and with the expectation, like, no, you don't have to use it if you have another space or when it's there as a landing pad.
Great. And then this last question you had touched on, but maybe it'll be helpful for the group to clarify again when it makes sense to submit more than one application, or when it makes sense to submit one that maybe applies to multiple focus areas. The specific question was, can I submit an application for more than one focus area? I think just walking the group through again, kind of that breakdown would be great.
Yeah, sure. So yes, you can submit in one idea that will apply to more than one focus area. So as I mentioned, the focus areas are not exclusive. So they're overall encompassing the challenges that residents in those neighborhoods are experiencing, right? So let's say you have an idea to have some sort of smart hub or mobility hub, but it touches on, access to mobility information as well as fostering safe and welcoming streets, for example. Yes, when you submit your idea, make sure you check each of the boxes that the focus areas that your idea applied to. And then in terms of submitting separate applications, for example, do not send a separate application if you're doing a smart mobility hub and you want it to go towards one application, one focus area, and then submit another application so it goes to another focus area. Just go ahead and check each of those boxes, and that works.
Cool. I think that's it for questions. So at least that have come in. So Siobhan, if you want to round us out, that'd be great.
Sure.
Oh, wait. Sorry, I just saw another one. Will you be sharing this presentation? And so this session has been recorded and will be made available on our website, so you can go back and revisit all the information that we went over here live.
Exactly. So seriously, this time, we're going to close out now since we don't have any more questions. Feel free to send emails if you have any additional questions. We also will be having another info session in February. For those of you that may want to continue to stay engaged, or if you submit an application and you also want to continue to ask additional questions in a setting like this, there will be another info session before the application closes, and the application closes February 24th. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see some of you continue to engage with the Accessible Street Studio as well as apply.